Congressman Schiff, it's Joy Reid. The footage that we saw, as incredibly disturbing as it was, sort of begs the question of how coordinated this effort was on the inside of the Capitol. We saw people roaming throughout the Capitol and chanting Speaker Pelosi's name and seeming to hunt individual members and leadership in that way. There's been implication in the past from some members that fellow members of Congress assisted in some way in planning or providing logistics, perhaps even directions in terms of where to go inside the Capitol by doing tours. Will we get that kind of information and evidence through these hearings?
I can't go into too many specifics. We have investigated what role any member or members of Congress may have played in the run-up to that day or on that day. We've investigated the issue of tours, potentially tours or a tour involving a member or members. I'm not at this point authorized to go into that evidence. But it is part of the body of work that we've been able to uncover and we'll be sharing. I don't want to overstate or understate it, but this is just a part of what we'll be presenting to the public.
And what would be the potential implication if a member or members did participate in providing logistical information? We know this is not a trial. This is not a criminal proceeding. It's informational. It's for us to know the history of what happened. But could a member like that, can you imagine a member who is exposed theoretically in these hearings continuing to serve in Congress unimpeded?
Well, look, it's inexplicable to me how members of Congress, seeing what took place on January 6th, and we were, of course, there, and those police officers saved our lives. It's inexplicable to me that so many of my Republican colleagues could go right back onto that House floor, knowing how many Capitol police officers had been beaten and injured, and pick up where they left off, trying to overturn the election. So there's a lot that, frankly, I can't understand. Our job will be to expose all of the conduct of that day and what led to it. In terms of remedies that the Justice Department may have, that is ultimately a decision for the Attorney General. But our role is really one of protecting the public, of looking at what took place, who was involved, holding those accountable by exposing their misconduct, and then proposing reforms to protect us going forward.
Congressman Schiff, it's Lawrence O'Donnell. I'm going to assume that most people who work at the Justice Department watched this hearing tonight, even those working in civil divisions and environmental areas that have nothing to do with the work you're doing. But there would be people watching it who do have overlaps with the work you're doing. Do you believe that those people working at the Justice Department tonight learned things in your hearing that they did not know?
I'm certain that they learned things that they didn't know because, some of the material that we presented and much of the material that we've accumulated is part of our investigation. It's not part of the Justice Department's investigation. And I'm sure they are watching it carefully, and they should watch it carefully. I would hope that they're doing their own investigation and they're being as aggressive and diligent about it as we are. Ultimately, we have very limited authority in terms of what the Justice Department does. We have the most authority, Lawrence, as you know, when someone is in contempt of Congress. And we've made 4 referrals, and the department has only been willing to go forward with 2 of them. I hope that with respect to the events that we're going to be sharing information with the public about over the next few weeks, that the Justice Department, if they haven't uncovered this evidence themselves, is paying very close attention, and that they will follow the evidence wherever it leads, as the Attorney General has said that he will. After all, a federal judge, as we again quoted this evening, in California, has already found on the basis of the limited evidence that he has seen that the former president and others around him likely violated multiple federal laws.
Congressman, it's Nicole Wallace. One of the first things that Congresswoman Liz Cheney said in her opening remarks was this: as you will see in the hearings to come, President Trump believed his supporters at the Capitol, and I quote, "were doing what they should be doing." This is what he told his staff as they pleaded with him to call off the mob to instruct his supporters to leave. Are you prepared now to share which witness said that? And will that witness testify either on video or live in these hearings?
I'm not prepared to make that kind of a disclosure. I certainly would expect that we'll be presenting, the sources of different information so that the public can understand how we know what we know. I think that's an important part of telling the story. But at this point, I can't speak for the chair and vice chair in terms of particular witnesses or disclose the sources of some of our information.